This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
The Levitical priests were more than just religious leaders. They were the doctors for the Israelites. Rochelle and Steve Siefkin reveal both biblical and extra-biblical evidence of ancient temples as hospitals, priests as doctors, and oils as medicine. Because it's the end of the sixth day, the sun is set, and this is Shabbat Night Live. Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. It's Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. What did Yeshua say to the lepers after he healed them? There's no punchline, but he said, go show yourself to the priest. Why? Because the priest would examine the skin and declare the leper clean or healed. However you want to say it. The Levites were the doctors. And tonight, we're going to learn about some of the ways that they may have used oils as medicine. That's coming up tonight with Rochelle and Steve Siefkin. Now, the Day of First Fruits is coming up according to the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. So let's talk about that with my co-host, Matt Weimer. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Scott.
So yeah, we have first fruits coming up, obviously Passover first, then first fruits. Now, we see it up on the screen here. We'll throw it up on the screen. There's where it is on a Sunday. And like you were mentioning here just a minute ago before the cameras came on, it's always on a Sunday.
Yes.
Now, why is it always on a Sunday? How come everything else moves around, but that one stays there?
It's the morrow after the Shabbat, according to Leviticus. So it's always the day after the Shabbat. That falls within unleavened bread.
Okay. Now, is this what some people will say, well, this is when Yeshua, the ladies were coming up to him and he said, don't touch me. I haven't yet ascended to my Father. What does that have to do with this?
So he was raised, when he was first raised, but he hadn't gone up to the Father. He wasn't, he hadn't presented his first fruits yet. So he wasn't able to, that's why he was saying, don't touch me. He hasn't ascended to the Father.
Okay, so the first fruits that were practiced every year, this was the real thing. This was when Yeshua presented the first fruits. The first fruits of, I guess, the first harvest of the dead, really, right? Is what that was.
Yes, absolutely. The 24 elders. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and we can find all that in the chronological Gospels.
Correct.
Which is why I asked you, because people always call you and ask these questions, so I thought you probably have a pretty good answer.
Yeah.
In fact, you have a pretty good love gift this month, too. So your love gift is the end from the beginning, and this is a continuation of your first one, right?
Yes. This is the second part. After I talked in February about the Gog of Magog war, I go into other places in the Middle East that have everything to do with the end times. Places like Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, parts of Arabia, Egypt, places like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, that's this month's love gift, and there's still some time to get it. And of course, there's other things you can get with that love gift. And speaking of things coming up here, so when we were talking about the Day of First Fruits, what is that all about? Well, they presented a first part of the harvest, right? And that was a faith offering because they didn't know if anything else was going to come up. The rule was from Yehovah, you present me the first that comes out of the ground, the first bit that is ripe. You guys are not going to eat that. You offer that as an offering. You might think, well, what's the big deal? The big deal is, what if there was a hailstorm the next week? What if there was a disease? What if some locusts came in all of a sudden from nowhere and got rid of the rest of the crop? They gave what they had before they knew they were going to get anything else. So it was a faith offering. So what do we do today? We try and follow that same pattern and say, look, if we are feeding you with the bread of the word, as it were, and you appreciate that, we would sure appreciate some support in that with a love gift offering. Just as part of first fruits. And so we challenge folks that if we're a good thing for you in your home, if this has been a real blessing to you, would you consider a faith offering for first fruits? And we just say, please, and thank you for that. We really appreciate that because that keeps things going around here, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Allows us to continue doing what we're doing.
Yep. So that and the love gift, that's the reason we have a store. All these things are just straight up donations. Anything like that keeps things moving because it's just the way of the world. That's the way things go. I mean, people say, well, Yeshua didn't need money. Well, he kind of had an accountant named Judas to take care of the money.
That's right.
So obviously there were donations coming in so they could go from town to town. And that's what we're trying to do, is just go from town to town via the internet. So,
that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, okay. Well, so please and thank you for that, for considering a love gift donation for First Fruits. Now, the Levitical priests were more than just religious leaders. They were the doctors for the Israelites. Rochelle and Steve Siefken tell us how the Levites may have used oils as medicine in biblical times. But first, here is the Kaddish with Michael Rood.
Yeshua said, Abraham saw my day and rejoiced. When did Abraham see his day? When the King of Righteousness, the Melchizedek, brought forth bread and wine. And when he brought forth bread and wine, it says that the Melchizedek blessed the Most High. And that prayer is still remembered and is what Yeshua said when he blessed the Most High the night of the Last Supper, the night before the Passover lambs were slain. Yeshua said, Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, hamotzi lechem mi'aretz. This broken bread represents my broken body which is broken for you. By my stripes you are healed. Do this as often as you do this in remembrance of me. And then he took the cup. And in the words of the Melchizedek, he blessed the Most High. Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech ha'olam, Borei pri hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua said, this represents and has represented from the time of Abraham the renewed covenant. My blood will purchase for you. As often as you do it in remembrance of me. Shabbat Shalom.
Last week, we had some really good information about essential oils. Where did they come from? How have they been used? Even how to use them properly and safely. We touched a little bit on how essential oils appeared in the Bible, and we're going to talk more about that with Steve Siefken and Rochelle Siefken. Well, Siefken, welcome back to Shabbat Night Live.
Thank you for having us. We're really glad to be here.
You have an essential oil for tongue-tiedness, or no?
No,
okay.
that I don't have.
I'm going to have to work on that myself.
It's very common. People say, there's an oil for that, but I don't think there's one for tongue-tied.
That's true.
So, Steve, you want to talk more about the oils in the Levitical priesthood. When you were here for your series with us on, basically about the Levitical priesthood, you mentioned that they had used them in the temple, and that explained a lot of things. But I don't want to steal what you're going to talk about today. But I'd love to hear more about what you were talking about there.
Yes, I had a hard time when we first started keeping the commandments, fitting in the temple, and because everything's got to be practical. God has to make sense in my mind. And if just this religious thing doesn't make sense to me, and doing things like that for a religious purpose, my mind wasn't buying it. So I just really dug into it, and I studied a lot of temples around there. And lo and behold, every temple around there used it as their physicians and just how to heal the sick. And they were the government regulating their hospitals, and that's what the temple was. And so that just changed my perspective on everything in the scripture. And so I wanted to share some of that, because the oils in the Levitical priesthood, it wasn't a religious thing, and that's kind of what we always thought. What I shared in that last series you were talking about on the temple, there were basically 4 purposes for the tabernacle. The first one, it was a bank. That's what the burnt offering was for. It regulated contracts. And every temple in that time, they did the same thing. When you were going to have a contract, you would ratify it with a burnt offering. I never thought of that before. It makes the burnt offering very practical all of a sudden when you see it that way. But there's writings, and they had title deeds all sealed with a burnt offering, and not just the Levitical temple, but all the temples in the ancient Near East. The second, it was a judicial system to enforce the law of God. That's what the sin offering and trespass offering. We call it a fine, or a fine with punitive damages today. The third, it was food regulation. Kosher, Kashering meat, those are the terms we use today. The Jews today even have a kosher certificate regulating their food. In ancient times, this was the government making sure that the food that goes to the stores is the way God said to do it. And I'm all for it. We should do it. We should make sure we're eating God's food today. That's all it was. But finally, it was a hospital. It was to heal the sick. So if people were declared sick, they'd go to the priest. That's what the Bible directly says. And that was basically the cleansing offering. That's how the sacrificial system fit in there. And unclean, this was mind-blowing to me to just realize that there's a practical definition for these words. Unclean just means to be foul, contaminated, to pollute, be polluted. It's what we'd call sick today, or infectious, or something like that. I always thought of it as like a very religious term. You were considered unclean when you touch a dead body. Well, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? You're probably infectious. They may have whatever they had that caused them to die, you could now have. So those are the reasons why you'd be unclean. When you have an open wound or a running issue or something like that, women during menstruation were unclean. When you have a disease of some sort, all these were reasons to be unclean. And what we know from science today is, yes, those are reasons you might be contaminated or infectious or something like that.
Or contagious.
Contagious. Or there's a good word. That's the one I should have thought of.
Well, and probably the reason why they cover the dead bodies with essential oils.
Yes, to make sure you deal with the diseases. And that was the embalming practice.
Well, all the spices that the women went to buy when Yeshua had just been crucified, right?
Exactly.
All that. They bought a lot of it too.
They did.
Yeah.
So.
And it just kind of blew me away to realize these were practical reasons, not religious reasons. We use oils today in the church, but it's all religion. It's not really for a practical reason. And I think we should go back to looking at the Bible from a national perspective. Today we like to call this ceremonially unclean. I studied this out pretty thoroughly. I don't think there's any ceremony that makes you unclean or anything ceremonial in the Bible. Everything's practical and makes sense. And God is just a practical God that He makes sense. Unclean simply means you were infectious, what we might call sick today. And that's all they were doing, is dealing with the sick. That's the job of the Levitical priests. So they had lots of different responsibilities. Some of them were the physicians. And it gives you a different perspective on how God said to do things. So in a hospital, it's dealing with the healing of sick. The sick were brought to the tabernacle or temple to be seen by the priest. It says straight out in Leviticus 13, the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest to pronounce him unclean. So they were letting you know when you're sick or not. If declared sick by the priest, the man or woman are to declare their sickness to others. Doesn't that make sense? It says to cover your upper lip with a cloth and cry out, unclean, unclean. I always see this, you're doing some religious ceremony, like you're ringing a bell saying unclean, unclean. That's not, you're just saying, hey, I'm sick, you might want to stay back today. You're covering yourself up so that you're not getting someone else whatever you have. And that makes sense to me. I would like to, if everybody did that when you're sick, to say, hey, you know what, let's keep our distance a little bit so I don't get you sick. I think that would just be an amazing practice to have in America, although most people kind of do that anyways, but some people don't. If declared sick by the priest, the man or woman could be quarantined or really just removed from the camp. If you're seriously sick, you're kind of set aside, go outside and away from people until you can deal with that sickness. This would be something more on the serious level. And finally, the sick were to seek natural remedies such as herbs and oils. Look at these verses. I've got 3 up here. Psalm 51:7, purge me with hyssop and I shall be clean. Hyssop's going to help you be clean. This is putting some sort of an ointment on you. Let them take a lump of figs and lay it for a plaster upon the boil and he shall recover. And then even in the New Testament, is any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the church and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil. I always saw that as a religious ceremony. I don't think it is anymore. I think they were doing something with the oils to help someone recover from whatever illness. I think there was a thought behind it.
So there's something in that oil. There's some kind of...
Right, take it from a metaphorical idea to a practical application.
Right. So it's not just a bunch of olive oil. They was infused with something, and that's why they...
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, even during Passover, you take the hyssop and you put it with the blood of the lamb and you paint it over the doorpost. And you always think, why hyssop? Well, Probably because the plant, and it does, the plant has certain properties, and so it's beneficial, right? It's dealing with part of the things you might find in the blood, right? Diseases or whatever you might find in the blood.
Okay, so it's kind of neutralizing the disease-causing properties of this blood that came out of this animal.
Right.
That kind of thing. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right? And so again, everything's got a purpose.
Yeah. And then Leviticus 13 and 14 really tell you the job of the Levites as physicians. And right at the end of the chapter, it says, this is the law for all manner of plague of leprosy. And I personally think the word leprosy is not what we call it today. It's representative of a lot of different illnesses. But right at the end, it says, what's their job? To teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the law of leprosy. They're diagnosing disease. They were the diagnosticians. They were the ones, hey, you're okay. You can go back and join society. You're not going to get anybody sick. It's just this or whatever. And they're letting you know as a government-funded function, the hospitals. Can you imagine if America did this? If we were on God's page with our hospital system, it would just be fantastic. We should spend more time figuring what God meant, trying to study that out in science and understanding it His way instead of going different.
It'd be a lot less expensive too.
That's true.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
Amen to that.
So, what were they? Here's some scholarly quotes I wanted to share, and I'm big on quotes, but this is what kind of convinced me of this. And I can probably show you dozens more. There's just so many quotes on ancient temples being hospitals, but this one from this scholar said, the earliest institutional care of patients had its inception in the ancient Egyptian and Greek temples. In most instances, these temples were dedicated to gods of healing, or as is generally believed now, to rational beings whose mundane achievements earned them deification. So this is what caused me to think they weren't talking about some mythical god up in, this was some person that had this great revelation or ability to heal, and we deified that person, and they became the god of this area, not because they're really a god like we think in Christian circles today, but scholars point out this was just a man that gained such prominence in society, and they were in the temples healing people.
Well, it's even used in musical circles today. If someone is really good at playing the guitar in a rock band, he's known as a guitar god.
Yes.
Right.
Well, we don't think he's a god. We're just saying he's so good at this that no one else can touch him, right? So that's, again, here with their same kind of thing they're doing here, is giving somebody a nickname. Or,
yeah, I actually shared this in the very first series I did, where the gods, the judges and the rulers were called gods. And they were just regular old people. They were just, people who did amazing things or were great leaders. And the Caesar was considered a god. All the ancient societies, their rulers were gods. Here's another quote. In ancient Greece, temples dedicated to the healer god Asclepius, known as Asclepia, functioned as centers of medical advice, prognosis, and healing. Does that not sound like the CDC? That's basically what they were. Their government regulated this. In the Asclepion of Epidaurus, I'm using this one a lot because it was well known for healing. 3 large marble boards dated to 350 BCE preserve the names, case histories, complaints, and cures of about 70 patients who came to the temple with a problem. Why are they going to this religious organization? For healing. Some magical potion? No, they were using healing methods. They were using oils, and they were using the laying on of hands. We're going to get into that too a little bit. All these things are part of healing with essential oils even.
Because nowadays, if you said to a person, oh, I'm going to go to church for healing, they would think, oh, you're just going to have someone go and pray over you.
Right.
Right? And yet here you can see that, no, there was a very practical reason for it, that they were actually healing.
The best predictor of the future is history, especially when it comes to biblical prophecy. But it's not easy. Names of people and places change over time, so how can we properly interpret what we read in the Bible?
The best predictor of the future is history. So if you want to look at what could be happening again, look at what's happened in that same location over time and time again.
In The End from the Beginning, a Rood Awakening's own Matthew Weimer exposes nicknames and code words woven into the tapestry of Scripture that reveal the players and places of end-time events. This teaching is not for sale, and it's not available anywhere online. Instead, we'd like to give you this teaching as a thank you gift for donating to A Rood Awakening International. When you donate $50 as a love gift in April, you'll get The End from the Beginning with Matthew Weimer on DVD, Blu-ray, or streaming on the michaelrood.tv app. Donate $100 and you'll get The End from the Beginning, plus a set of Passover coasters customized with the lyrics to Michael Rood's famous 10 Plagues of Egypt parody song. Donate $300 and you'll get The End from the Beginning, the 10 Plagues of Egypt Passover coasters, and an 18-inch solid birch handmade door hanger featuring a Passover greeting transliterated from Hebrew. These gifts are a limited time offer from Michael Rood to thank you for your support. Make your donation today and receive the $50 gift, the $100 gift, or the $300 gift. Thank you. When you donate to receive the love gift, you ensure that these teachings keep coming from A Rood Awakening International. Use your smartphone to scan the QR code on your screen to donate now and receive these limited time gifts. Or call 888-766-3610 or get your gifts online with a donation at monthlylovegift.com.
The Levites were actually called apothecaries. Exodus 30:25, after the art of the apothecary, they were making the holy anointing oil and the incense oil. That basically means to compound or make ointment, prepare spices. That's what they were doing.
There's people today known as apothecaries.
Yeah.
I mean, that continues.
Yes, it's actually well known. We just don't make this connection sometimes, and I think it's very important to understand just how practical God is and that this is how we're supposed to run our nation. And it would fix your nation in a heartbeat if we just do what God said. Just do what he said and things would be just so much better. All the blessings would come back on your nation. I think of America specifically, how far we've strayed, and less of the curses. And that's really what we want. So Leviticus 13 and 14 gives a great example of their healing. I shared that earlier. Those are 2 chapters. They anointed the upper ear, anointed the right thumb, anointed the right big toe. They used cedar wood and hyssop. And these things have so many beneficial attributes to us. Promote relaxation, emotional balance, and improves focus and wisdom. It's an antiviral, helps muscle spasms, helps digestion, anti-inflammatory. There's so many different things for them. But sometimes God only gives us the answer in part, and we got to just kind of dig through and figure out what's actually going on here. And if you really study this out, we know this today called reflexology. And reflexology is a type of massage that involves applying different amounts of pressure to the feet, hands, and ears. It's based on a theory that these body parts are connected to certain organs and body systems. I don't know if that's true. I don't know that we have a whole lot of science behind it. Most reflexology doesn't include oils, but in the Bible, they're using oils. I just find that fascinating. There's even charts today of the ear, different locations where people think affect different things, the hands and the feet. I shared once in the temple one of the gurus, so to say, said cedarwood on your right thumb. It's supposed to open your mind for thinking. So whenever I'm studying the scripture, I put cedarwood and I just massage my right thumb. I don't know. If you think I'm onto something, maybe it works. Maybe.
Well, that is true. I mean, reflexology is one. There's 2 other systems I can think of in the body that do the same thing. The vertebrae and the teeth all act as circuit breakers for the body. So if there's something wrong with this particular tooth, that's why your pancreas is not working. Or
so I knew that about the vertebrae. I did not know that about the teeth.
Yep.
Me too.
Yep. A dentist friend, Dr. Thomas Lokensgaard, a good friend of the ministry here, he taught me that. And it's the very same thing. Just as the vertebrae do the same thing, teeth do as well.
Wow.
And apparently reflexology, well, I kind of knew that one already.
Well, I don't understand the science behind it. And I don't know that anybody really does, but I think we should focus on that.
Oh, yeah.
If God put it in his scriptures and he said, this is the way to do it, I think we should spend some of our time and even our money to investigate it and study it out and see what.
Well, even like the Chinese who discovered the meridians in the body, that's not some heebie-jeebie New Age thing.
Right.
That's just a science that the Chinese happened to discover 4,000 years ago. Maybe we should pay attention, and they were right.
Well, maybe we should just not dismiss something without looking at it,
Exactly.
things without research and things like that. And that's true in most subjects.
Yeah. Well, here's what some of these charts show. Reflexology, the upper ear, deals with allergies, blood pressure, liver, tonsils, and the appendix. The right thumb deals with your brain. That's what almost all these charts, well, that's why the guy was saying cedarwood in your right thumb. It might help you think. The pituitary, sinus, neck, throat, thyroid, lots of different things. The right toe, your brain, hypothalamus, spine, pituitary, pineal gland. What does this do? Well, it promotes stability and balance in the body, clears addictions, compulsive behaviors, and bad habits. That's a holistic approach. If we've got those problems, we want to fix the problem, not cover up a symptom.
Well, and if anybody doubts it, what do you do with a pen in your hand if you're trying to think? You fiddle with the pen.
You do.
I'm touching my thumb multiple times here. I think maybe there's something to this.
That's interesting.
And it helps you think, right?
I neither.
Never thought about that.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Because you
crazy.
do. When you're really focusing, you're thinking. You're doing something.
Yeah. I'm touching your.
You're doing something.
Is there some kind of connection
Something
even when you do
distinctional that
this?
we know about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting. I never thought of that. That's interesting. So there's definitely something to this. And all I'm advocating for is we should investigate. Spend some of our money doing some scientific studies to see why. Maybe if we understood why, we'd be more interested in practicing it. I believe God. I'm just going to do it anyways and learn as I go. Of course, with safety, like we talked about last time. But I just wish our nation were more, let's give this a try. But we're not exactly doing that right now. Hopefully it will change. But the altar of incense, this is what we call a diffuser today. They didn't have the diffusers that we have today, but that's basically what that was. And it had the incense perfume, and it's the Hebrew word katoreth, which means to fumigate. This is what we would call aromatherapy today. If the temple was the hospital and you'd bring patients, they'd go see, well, no wonder this tent is infused with this healing oil so that when you're dealing with the sick, not only that, but the physicians, their immune system is much stronger so that they can deal with the sick. I think this is just the model we should be doing so that our physicians in our hospitals have a strong immune system because they're just breathing in these oils all day long as they're dealing with the sick. That just makes sense to me. They use stacte, which is basically myrrh. It's a little different, but it's very similar. Used as an anti-infection, anti-inflammatory, and an antiseptic. Onycha labdanum or cistus oil, used for antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, and immune enhancement. Galbanum, used as an antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, a cough remedy, and to help with pain relief. And frankincense, used for skin care, stomach ailments, immune enhancement, and anti-cancer effects. The one thing that's really neat about frankincense, and a lot of people will mention this, it's used so much in the Bible, probably because it helps enhance the other oils.
That's why it's so valuable. That's why it was such an expensive gift that was given to the Messiah.
Makes sense.
So these oils build each other up as you blend them. They benefit each other, where drugs kind of do the opposite usually. Not always. You can mix some. I'm not an expert on it, but they usually say, hey, what are you taking? You don't want to take that with this. Be very careful with that.
It's almost like a man's attempt to copy this.
Copy God, right?
Yeah.
Biomimicry, yes.
So the tabernacle was basically perfumed with healing incense or oils. And it was an incense, not an oil. They weren't as advanced as we are, but it's kind of the same principle. It was perfumed. But God also said something, don't make it for yourselves. And I want to share something that I've come to the conclusion on, but there's a lot of people that might not like this. And I think there were some people that commented when I kind of alluded to this at the temple one. But why would God tell us not to do something? Well, first, all of his commandments, he commanded us to do all of his commandments, to walk in all of his ways. So we should keep every commandment. Obviously, there's some we probably can't do today. But Deuteronomy 6:24 says it's for your good always. It's for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is this day. Second, this blend was for use in the tabernacle. So a lot of people start to say, oh, that's for the priesthood. We don't have to do that today. But if you're going to apply things correctly, I think we can. I really, really do. This blend was holy for Yehovah. What does that phrase mean? This blend's holy for Yehovah. Well, the offerings were most holy for Yehovah. Well, they were given to the priests. The priests used them. A house could be sanctified, that's the word for holy again, just translated differently, unto Yehovah, but the priest received the house. It was given to him. So something given that was holy unto Yehovah was given to the priesthood. When a field goes out in the Jubilee, it is holy unto Yehovah. The priests received the field. The priests were holy unto Yehovah. They were the ones that received all that stuff. Who's our priesthood here? Holy for Yehovah basically means given to the priesthood. Who's our physicians today? This holy anointing oil is for the physicians of your nation. It's not for you and I in our own homes to use, but I do think we can use them in our hospitals. And I think our physicians should be free to use them without feeling any guilt. That's my personal opinion, and I know a lot of people don't like that. But when I go through and see what holy for Yehovah means, it's for the priesthood to use. Who's our government? Who's running our nation when it comes to physicians? That's what we should be doing. I would never blend it and use it in my own home, but I think for our regulated hospitals, we're just doing it wrong. That's the problem.
Use it for the intent that it was originally intended for.
Right. That's what the spirit of the law in my mind means. What did God mean by it? What did he intend it to mean?
Right. And if we had a temple standing, that would be the hospital, and we would use the incense there. But if there isn't, then like we make a provision for all other things in the Old Testament where there's no priesthood. Well, how can we honor that? Right. We look at other things and honor it. So why not this? I think there's a valid argument there, honestly.
It's always taking that religion out of it.
I think if we were doing it right, I think we could use it. I don't think we should abuse it. I don't think we could use it in our own homes or something like that. But I think our government should be regulating it the way God said. The temple was their government. It was their hospital, their judicial system. We have all those things. Why would we do it wrong if God told us how to do it right?
Yep.
I know we're not. I don't see America changing that way, but I think we could if we did. But I can't fix that. None of us up here can fix that. I would like to see us. The Messiah is going to fix it someday when he comes back, and that's going to be a great time. Absolutely. This was a very strong blend of essential oils. Perhaps this blend is designed to protect the priests, who were the physicians. They were dealing with the sick daily, and their immune system probably needed this extra protection. The priests were the doctors of the Old Testament, and the tabernacle was the hospital. I think in that application, it's perfectly okay. That's my personal opinion.
I guess it's over to me.
Yeah, it's your job to talk about the topical stuff and the aromatic. Sure.
So so topic application, we touched a little bit on this in the first episode. And so we are just going to talk a little bit more about it today. And it's important to note that topical basically means on top, right? It's a topical application is the process of placing essential oils on the skin, on the hair, the mouth, the teeth, the nails, or the mucous membranes of the body. And applied neat is a term that's used. It just means that you're applying something without a carrier oil.
I'll bet you did not know that being an Ambassador Club member gets you exclusive early access to tickets to in-person events right here at Rood Awakening headquarters. And I'll bet you didn't know that Ambassador Club members also get private invitations to surprise sales and other appreciation events, not to mention special gifts, cards, and other nice stuff. So why do ambassadors get all these perks? Because Ambassador Club members are the ones who keep the lights on, who make sure that new teachings keep coming, and they're the ones we can count on because they're committed every month. The Ambassador Club is an automated donation program of $100 a month or more if you'd like. So if you appreciate the consistency of a Rood Awakening videos, social media posts, events, and most importantly, people to pray with you on the phone and help answer your questions, be a part of the consistency that makes it happen. Join the Ambassador Club.
So direct application, which I'm a huge fan of. My thought is if wherever you're hurting, it just makes sense to put the oil there. You apply directly on the area of concern. Again, you're only talking 1 to 3 drops. These are very minimalistic applications. Your fastest absorption places are typically going to be your wrists, the bottom of your feet, your ears, and then what a surprise, that connects to the reflexology. One of the places that it absorbs the best. And again, with diluting with children, 1 to 3 drops and a carrier oil. Like with children, it's almost always with a carrier oil. You pretty much never want to go neat with them, just to be cautious. So again, testing first. We talked about that a little bit in the last episode, and because some oils can burn. These are some of those hot oils. I use that term. It's a term to mean that these are oils that people will typically have a stronger reaction to, and when they're applying them. And these are oils like cassia, cinnamon, citronella, clove, lemongrass, oregano, peppermint, thieves oil, and thyme. So I mentioned I had a reaction to oregano. I've never had one to peppermint, but so I think different people are a little bit different. So again, caution is always better. Massage, and Steve's sister is a massage therapist, and being able to have that stimulation of the muscle and the skin and the connective tissues, various techniques. They do promote healing. And so they promote healing, they promote balance, they promote connection. And when massaging a large area of the body, you want to dilute the oils. I think it's 15 to 30%. So that's kind of just an average number you want to do. And unless trained, note the trained, right? You want to use light to medium massage strokes, right? So you don't want to be doing some shiatsu massage without any training whatsoever and be like, but I'm using oils. Like, yeah, no.
Push a vertebrae out of place.
Right, exactly, right, no. The word Hebrew, what is the word?
Mashak?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to pronounce Hebrew well for you. So.
But it basically means to rub with oil. And it means to anoint, also to paint. And so this is the word that we see the Bible uses the Bible uses.
So very close to Mashiach.
Mashiach,
Exactly.
yes.
So the anointed one.
I wonder if he used oil.
See, I wonder.
I wonder.
I
think we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that more. Okay, all right. Sorry, Rochelle, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Reflexology, we've already touched on the method of applying oils to certain points of the body. And I get it. Like, it's weird for me to sit there and think, oh, my liver's bothering me. I'm going to go up to this part of my ear and put something on it. But so you have to trust the science. And it's perfectly okay to do that.
Yeah, trust the real science, not the science from 4 years ago, not that science.
Right, exactly.
Don't trust that science.
Good point.
This science. Yeah,
this science, right?
A little caveat there. Okay.
So this is just a more blown up picture of some of the things we're talking about. So as you were saying, if I was having a problem with my liver, you can see the spots on the ear that you would put that on there. Lungs, etc.
That is fascinating. Yeah, take a screenshot of that, everybody. That is great. That's wonderful.
You can find these charts online. It's readily available. We just don't really think
It's just
who would think right here and trying to find it. But like you had mentioned, at certain points, I think we should study this more. I really
right. And if you don't know, if you don't know this, but you know where your pancreas is, and you want to put it directly where your pancreas is, then by all means, do that too.
Yep.
I think it's perfectly fine. So this is the hand chart, a little bit more blown up, and you can see, again, the different parts of the hands that you can treat for different things. We have so again, the bottom of your feet, because I guess your feet are bigger, you got some big spots down there. You want to treat your lungs, your liver, your small intestines. Makes me wonder if I stab my foot, if I'm, am I hurting my brain every time I stab my foot? Maybe.
Yep.
Feels like it. Am I stubbing my toe?
Speaking of that, by the way, so the reflexology, if someone has, if they're constipated, you give them a foot rub on the bottom near the heel. That will help.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's fascinating. Well, let's see. That makes sense because it's down near your small intestines.
There you go. Right there, yeah.
I love it when it comes together. And so essentially, the other thing, auricular therapy is a method of applying oils to various points on the rim of the ears to deal with certain internal body parts. And compresses. So this is actually something people are probably more familiar with. So the basin, I remember this when I was a kid, right? Your mother would get the hot water basin out, and then they would put something in it, and they'd have you sit with your head over it when you had a cold.
Oh,
to kind of get the steam in there, the moisture in there to help clear your lungs. And so that's a certain way of kind of creating that. And you can add 2 quarts of hot or cold water with your desired essential oil. Again, your water actually very quickly distributes and sort of enhances the oils. So if you were like an entire bathtub, you're talking 3-4 drops of thing. And I did that with my kids when they were little. They would have a hard time. I think it was Jonathan was having a hard time sleeping. And it was like, all right, let's take a bath and put some of those lavender drops in there and see if it would just kind of calm him down.
And I'm assuming, like, obviously not a whole bathtub worth is going to be hard to do, but in an essential oil diffuser like that, I'm assuming that the cleaner the water, the better. If you can find some kind of like bottled water or something out of a distiller, does that matter?
Actually, actually, most of the diffusers call for using regular tap water.
Okay.
That the more, because they actually needs the minerals and stuff to interact with.
Aha.
And so
not necessarily tap water that might have chemicals, but something
Correct.
that's not a distilled
Right.
water.
Yes.
Yeah, distilled water has no minerals, by the way. So
Correct.
if people don't know that term, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so you
Makes
don't want to
sense.
use, you want to stay away from the distilled. In any case, and so you can certainly do this. The other thing people can do, like again, if you had a headache, you could certainly take a hot water sponge, put some of the headies on it and just kind of relax it against your forehead, because that's also going to promote, you know, just kind of relaxation and help. Again, bath water, I addressed this a minute ago, 3 to 6 drops for your entire bath. But you'll find lavender is one used for a lot of that, which is why so many children's products, they'll have like bath time stuff is all lavender. Scented. And so our companies out there are using a lot of these products, are using our oils. We just think of them as smells, but there's actually beneficial properties. There's a reason why they're picking lavender for these nighttime, you know, sleep aids, things like that. So aromatic involves the application of directly inhaling. It's a fine mist or oil or vapor of volatile aromatic components that have evaporated from the oil. So these are where our diffusers come in. And there are so many different types of diffusers out there. You asked me the other day, or a little bit earlier, if there was a certain kind of diffuser that we recommended over another. And the truth is, no. We've had different ones from different companies. I had one friend that spent several $100s on one, and it was gorgeous. But she used it as a decorative thing in her home. And so it had more of that purpose. So some will have more water, less water. Some will run for an hour or two versus 8 hours all night. Something like this is actually designed to probably go all night long. So it's great to put it up like before bed if you were trying to, again, try to deal with the cold.
And I'm assuming too, some of them have more parts than others. So how much do you want to clean? You know, if the fewer the parts, the better, that kind of thing.
They're actually very low maintenance.
Yes.
But there's a disc inside that you need to change out. But to be honest, we've never done that. I think we may have done it once or twice.
We've had to clean just once or twice. We've had to clean them.
They're not expensive, so you can. Often, after a couple of years, if it goes bad, you buy a new one.
Yeah.
The thing is you want to avoid is certain citrus oils. So a lot of the citrus-based, like the grapefruit and things like that, don't do well in the diffusers. And I personally, I'm a big fan of using the blends in the diffusers because I don't have to think that hard about it. I don't have to think of what to put in there. So there's so many blends, there's so many blends that we have. Again, we have Oil of Joy, you know, which my friend had one that was a friendship blend. So we'd come over and hang out, she'd put the friendship blend in there. And, you know, so there's so many different kinds depending on what you're treating.
Does it avoid arguments or something? Is that what?
Yeah, I guess.
We make jokes because we have people over for our new moons and people say, we had such a great time. And it's like, yeah, you're enjoying the oils, not our personalities.
We put the friendship oil in before you came.
That's right. So you must love us. No. Anyway, so the Hebrew word for that is fumigation. Basic ketoreth, which means fumigation.
Okay.
Again, it's a sweet incense or a perfume. Proverbs use that. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart. Again, which is probably why you see the oil of gladness and the oil of joy and all these different things mentioned in Scripture, because they do rejoice the heart and they can affect our moods.
Yeah, and in the last episode, we're going to talk about a little bit of the science and how smelling does affect your brain and it does affect your mood.
So diffusion, we already kind of mentioned a little bit about that. It's clearly putting oils directly into the air. We talked about some of the safety from that in the last episode. Again, they should be in well-ventilated rooms. It's probably not smart to put it directly next to a fan because it's going to blow it all away, especially if you're trying to inhale it. But again, you know, so be cautious with everything. So direct inhalation. So this is actually really great with, say, the Breathe Easier blend that we have, which is, it's going to be probably on the far left over there. But it is like when I have a cold, I might take just a drop or two and put it on my hands and then and you can feel it. You can feel it instantly, just cleaning up your sinuses. You want to check it out?
Sure. So just put one drop?
Yeah, just put one drop in your hand.
Okay. All right.
Because the blends usually have a carrier already mixed into them.
Oh yeah, that reminds me of the eucalyptus that you would put, or the Vicks Vapo Rub, as they call it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that very much.
And eucalyptus is actually typically one of the ingredients in
There you
that.
go. Okay. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left.
Yes.
What else can you tell us before we have to go for this week?
So again, typically with the aromatics, people will, you can disperse them in different ways. A cloth or a tissue. I've taken, what is the word? Cotton balls, thank you. Cotton balls, put 1 or 2 drops and then stuck it in my car vent.
Oh,
and
wow,
then it like
brilliant.
fumigates my entire car very quickly. I found that actually so much easier and cheaper than like there's these kind of expensive ones you can clip on your vent, and they just went through the oils way too fast and ran out, and I'm much happier with just a cotton ball, quite frankly. Hot water, we already talked about that. 1 to 3 drops of oil in hot water. Heat may lessen the effect of that. Vaporizers or humidifiers. I actually have a humidifier and there's a spot for you to add oils into it. The fans or vents, again, you can put a cotton ball, or actually you can take a cloth, like wet it, and then put a drop or 2 on it and just, hang it on your fan or something.
You know what I've done at home, actually, by the way? So you have your intake for your air, for your heating and air conditioning.
Oh.
I open it up, and on the inside of the filter, so it doesn't filter out the smell, I put a couple of drops of the essential oil in there and close it back up, and then the whole house smells.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, that's a good
I've never done that.
We've never done that.
We should try that.
Yeah, it doesn't last that long, but it's great for a few
No, but
minutes
it's
if
good for
people
a
are
few
coming
minutes.
over or something.
Yeah, right. It just like refreshes your house.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is fantastic. So perfume or cologne, which you can make out of, is kind of fun. We told the story kind of off air, but my husband gets that with. He goes somewhere and they'll be like, oh, why do you smell so good? And he's like, oh, it's these essential oils I'm wearing. Anyways, and so that's it.
Wow.
So you can use it a lot of different ways, and that's just the aromatic and topical uses. And then in our next episode, we'll talk about some of the carrier oils and some of the other uses for them.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you guys for joining us. This is fascinating stuff. I love this because everybody can use this at home. Doesn't require some kind of degree. You just go online, learn, make mistakes, whatever. It's okay. Or, if you're safe about it, like we mentioned in the first episode, you're not going to hurt yourself if you're being wise about it. So
no, and honestly, it depends on the oil company, but just a little bit amount of money, you can actually get quite a few oils.
Okay, very good. All right, Steve and Rochelle Seepkin, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for joining us. We hope you join us again next week for Shabbat Night Live. Until then, we bid you Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov.
Whenever and wherever you are watching this broadcast, it represents hundreds of man-hours of production and post-production, and then it goes out to the world in several different languages. Why is this possible? It's because people like you support this ministry. We do our best to get this out freely to the entire world. Freely you have received. Now, this is your opportunity to do as Yeshua said, and freely give.